in a bid to ease tensions, Israel, it's now urged the White House to reschedule a high-level meeting that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu had earlier cancelled. This was after the United States did not veto the UNSC's Gaza ceasefire resolution. We'll, of course, be bringing you the latest on the war front and the diplomatic ties between Israel and the United States and how this plays out on ground as well.
Also on World DNA, as per reports, Russia may have used a new guided bomb to attack Ukraine's Kharkiv. Now, Russia has not commented in response to this and denies targeting civilians in the region. Now, we're keenly watching how the recent terror attack on Moscow will impact the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war, as Russia believes Ukraine and the West were behind that attack. We'll continue to bring you the latest on that front as well. For now, let's get you started with the headlines.
Israel asked the White House to reschedule a high-level meeting on military plans for Rafah that Prime Minister Netanyahu had abruptly cancelled.
Pakistan Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif reviews security arrangements for Chinese projects, orders a joint probe by military and civilian officials into a suicide bombing that killed 5 engineers from China.
No relief from Delhi High Court for Arvind Kejriwal in the Delhi liquor scam case. The Delhi Chief Minister will be produced in a local court as his ED custody ends today.
At least 4 people killed in a stabbing spree in Illinois, with 1 victim in critical condition and another 4 in stable condition, according to local officials.
Former U.S. Senator Joe Lieberman, who ran as the Democratic nominee for Vice President in the 2000 election and became the first Jewish candidate on a major party ticket for the White House, dies at the age of 82.
The bodies of 2 people have been recovered from a vehicle which was submerged under the waters where the Baltimore Bridge collapsed. Operation to recover the bodies of 4 more people presumed dead continues.
Australian Open champion Yannick Sinner breezes into his 4th semi-final of the year. The second seed dropped just 6 games to dispatch Thomas Mahak in the Miami Masters.
Game in for 6.
All right, our top focus, of course, Israel, as we mentioned earlier, has urged the White House to reschedule a high-level meeting that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu had earlier cancelled.
And of course, that cancellation happened after the US did not veto the UNSC's Gaza ceasefire resolution. And of course, that left Benjamin Netanyahu quite miffed. In a bid to ease tensions now between the two allies, a White House confirmed that Netanyahu's office has now agreed to reschedule that meeting, which was earlier cancelled, dedicated to discuss the Israeli military's plans for the onslaught of Israel on the southern city of Rafah.
Reports claim Netanyahu is planning to send a delegation as early as next week. This after the United States allowed passage of a Gaza ceasefire resolution. Netanyahu had called off a planned visit, as Shivan just mentioned, to Washington by a senior Israeli delegation. The suspension of the meeting, it forced the United States to face a new obstacle as Washington tries to get Netanyahu to consider alternatives to a ground invasion of Rafah.
What we have said is the kind of mission that we could support is a much more targeted, limited campaign that could still achieve the same objectives, that could still lead to the defeat of those remaining Hamas battalions inside Rafah, but without massive harm to the civilian population, without hindering the delivery of humanitarian assistance, and without actually weakening Israel's security instead of strengthening it.
Meanwhile, U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham called on the Biden administration to allow Israel to work to destroy Hamas in Rafah. Recently, Republican Senator from South Carolina who was on a visit to Israel said this.
The 4 battalions that still reside in the Rafah region must be destroyed. That is non-negotiable. One thing I've learned from talking to the Israeli Defense Forces is if these battalions are left intact, everything they've achieved will be lost over time. So I urge the Biden administration, the Congress, to make sure that Israel has the time and space to achieve victory over Hamas militarily.
Earlier this week, Israeli Minister Yoav Gallant held several discussions with senior U.S. officials as threat of Rafah ground operations have increased differences between the United States and Israel. While meeting his Israeli counterpart, U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin also said civilian casualties in Gaza are too high. It also raised questions whether the United States is going to restrict military aid if Netanyahu decides to move on with the Rafah invasion.
As the humanitarian crisis in Gaza continues to worsen, Ireland says it will intervene in South Africa's genocide case against Israel.
Foreign Minister Michael Martin said that on the October 7th attack and the Gaza crisis, it represents the blatant violation of international humanitarian law on a mass scale. Meanwhile, in the Red Sea, U.S. forces destroyed 4 long-range unmanned aerial systems that were launched by Houthi rebels. According to U.S. Central Command, the 4 drones were aimed at a U.S. warship. Now for more on this, our correspondent Susan Tehrani has sent us this report from New York with all the other details with regards to this. Let's listen to this.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is now planning to send 2 officials to Washington for talks on the possible military operation in Rafah, reversing his previous decision to cancel the trip. The trip initially was canceled due to disagreements over a United Nations Security Council resolution calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. U.S. and Israeli officials now say that they have agreed to reschedule that meeting, which is considered to be quote-unquote urgent. The news comes as we're hearing that negotiations have once again fallen through regarding hostages. The State Department spokesperson, however, on Wednesday said that the most difficult issues involved in the hostage negotiations are yet to be resolved, but talks are not believed to have come to an end. Susan Tehrani reporting from New York for WION World is One.
Pakistan's Prime Minister called on Wednesday for a joint investigation by military and civilian officials into a suicide bombing that killed 5 engineers from China.
Shehbaz Sharif reviewed the security arrangements for Chinese projects as China stated that they strongly condemn this act of terrorism and asked Pakistan to speed up the hunt for the perpetrators and take steps to ensure the safety and the security of Chinese personnel in Pakistan.
Now, on Tuesday, a suicide bomber rammed a vehicle into a convoy of Chinese engineers working on a hydropower project at Drasu in Pakistan's northwest. This dashcam feed captured that moment.
Now, the Pakistan Prime Minister's office said Sharif called for a thorough joint investigation to be conducted, utilizing all resources of the state. Earlier, Sharif chaired a meeting of civilian and military officials that reviewed security arrangements for the protection of Chinese nationals and their interests. Pakistani President Asif Ali Zardari visited the Chinese embassy and extended condolences as well. Now, the suicide bomber rammed a vehicle into convoy of Chinese engineers working on hydropower projects at 2 previous attacks targeted at a naval air base, in Pakistan and a strategic port used by China in southwestern province of Balochistan. Remember, Beijing, it's poured billions of dollars into infrastructure projects in the region. Dasu, that's the site of a major dam. It's been attacked in the past as well, with a bus blast in 2021, killing 13 people and 9 Chinese among them, although no group claimed responsibility for those. Pakistan is home to twin insurgencies. One is mounted by Islamists and the other by ethnic militants seeking secession as they are angered by what they call the government's inequitable division of resources. Chinese interests are primarily targeted by the ethnic militants seeking to push Beijing out of mineral-rich Balochistan. However, that area is far from the site of Tuesday's attack. Officials say Pakistan has set up a dedicated force of police and military personnel to ensure security for Chinese activities. All right, let's shift our focus now. Russia is gaining momentum in its assault on Ukraine amid stalled Western aid. How will this play out on ground? What's the situation currently? Shivan gets you all the details. Over to you, Shivan.
Ever since that deadly attack on Moscow, everyone was expecting the onslaught on Ukraine to increase even further, and that's exactly what we are seeing now. Now, in the latest, Ukrainian officials say that 19 people were wounded in Kharkiv in the latest strikes since Russia's full-scale invasion, some of which have caused blackouts as well. And Russia is gaining momentum in its assault on Ukraine amid stalled Western aid, making the coming months critical to the direction of conflict. And now, Moscow seems to be using a new flying bomb. Here's all you need to know about that. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky condemned the Kharkiv attack as Russian terror. Moscow's willingness to take territory in the face of the high casualties and a boost in output of artillery shells is in contrast with a lack of sustained Western supply of artillery ammunition to Kiev. Now, Volodymyr Timoshko, head of Kharkiv Regional Police, stated that Moscow may have used a new type of guided bomb, which he described as the UMPB D30. Head of the Kharkiv Regional Police said, and I'm going to quote here, "This is something between a guided aerial bomb, which they have used recently, and a missile." Now, it's a flying bomb, so to say, in a way. Now, Kharkiv Regional Governor Ole also suggested that Moscow may have used a new type of bomb. He said it seems that the Russians decided to test their modified bombs on the residents of the houses. Now let's take a closer look at Russia's new flying bomb, the UMPB D30. The UMPB could be a method of adapting an unguided bomb into a precision munition with a degree of standoff range. As per the war zone, the UMPB appears to be a Russian effort to field a lower-cost standoff precision strike weapon. Now, such a weapon could provide the ability to strike targets surgically behind the front lines without having to use far more expensive and long-reaching weapons. Tactical standoff missiles in this class have seemingly been in relatively short supply as Moscow's full-scale invasion of Ukraine drags on into the third year. One-way attack drones like the Shahed 136 are also better used for longer-range coordinated strikes and are more vulnerable to air defenses. It's also possible that the UMPB could be used in the decoy role, equipped with a radar reflector and possibly an expendable electronic warfare payload. This will help guide bombs and other munitions make it to their targets, as well as stimulate air defense so they can be targeted. Now, over the spring and summer, Russia is likely to mount attacks designed to inflict casualties and push defenders westward and expand control of occupied territories even further. Back to you, Him.
Thank you so much, Shivan, for that comprehensive report on that. Well, of course, we'll continue to bring you all the developments on that front as and when they come in as well. But for now, let's shift our focus. Divers have recovered the remains of 2 of the 6 missing workers, and this more than a day after a cargo ship smashed into Baltimore's Francis Scott Key Bridge. The bodies of the 2 men were found in a red pickup truck that was submerged in icy waters of the river. Now, the 2 were identified as 35-year-old Alejandro, who was from Mexico and living in Baltimore, and 26-year-old Dolin Cabrera, who was from Guatemala and living in Maryland. Authorities have suspended efforts to recover bodies in the waters due to treacherous conditions. According to an investigator, approximately 6 hours of voyage data from the Dali cargo ship have been provided to the National Transportation Safety Board.
At this point, based upon the conditions, we're now moving from a recovery mode to a salvage operation. Because of the superstructure surrounding the vehicle, what we believe are the vehicles, and the amount of concrete and debris, divers are no longer able to safely navigate or operate around that. We have exhausted all search efforts in the areas around this wreckage.
The collapse will create a logistical nightmare for months, if not years. The port is a major East Coast hub for shipping. The bridge spans the Patapsco River, which massive cargo ships use to reach the Chesapeake Bay and then the Atlantic Ocean.
Now, the Baltimore port is the 17th largest in the country. The flow of containers to Baltimore can likely be redistributed to bigger ports. However, there could be major disruptions in shipping cars, coal and sugar. It was the busiest U.S. port for car shipments, handling at least 750,000 vehicles in 2023. In 2023, the port was the second busiest for coal exports. It is also the largest U.S. port by volume for handling farm and construction machinery, as well as agricultural products such as sugar and salt. Furthermore, the port supports more than 15,000 direct jobs and more than 139,000 indirect jobs connected to the port.
By this, it generates almost $3.3 billion in total personal income. Now, the collapse, though, is not likely to hurt worldwide trade because Baltimore is not a major port for container vessels. President Joe Biden promised to visit Baltimore soon and said that he wanted the federal government to pay to rebuild the bridge. Now, how long will it take to rebuild the bridge? Of course, that needs to be decided as we proceed further. Rebuilding could be a lengthy process and will depend on whether any of the remaining structure can be salvaged. It took 5 years to construct the original bridge from 1972 to 1977. The closure of the port for just 1 month could cost Maryland $28 million in lost business.
Now, Cuba, once home to a defining communist revolution, is once again witnessing protests.
Well, this time demonstrations are being fueled by food shortages and electricity outages in the country. Here's a report. Take a look.
A crowd swarms a state-run market in Cuba's Santiago de Cuba, jostling for a chance at a once-monthly ration of government-subsidized chicken. But panic ensues as rumors of scarcity spread. And that's when the lights go out again. This is life here, this father of two explains. You live with no plan, basically. A dozen residents in Santiago neighbourhoods told Reuters of their frustration at food shortages and electricity outages that sometimes top 10 hours a day. A long-standing US trade embargo and related sanctions, as well as an inefficient state-run economy, have led to shortages of food, fuel and medicine, while Cuba's obsolete power plants cannot meet demand. The Caribbean outpost of Santiago is the former home of Fidel Castro and an area sympathetic to the 1959 communist revolution. But street vendors like Yoni Alberto Mena are becoming angry.
Imagine at 2 in the morning, a blackout. These children start sweating and itching, and it's when they feel hungry. It's annoying. They go to school in the morning not wanting to. They can't learn what is taught at school properly. This is primitive.
Tensions even led to a rare public protest earlier this month, with several hundred gathering in a local park chanting power and food, according to first-hand accounts. Social media videos showed a smaller group shouting freedom as local Communist Party leader Beatrice Johnson prepared to speak with the crowd from a rooftop. The protests have been called largely peaceful, and in the weeks following, the power supply has become more regular and food rations are being distributed by the government, according to residents. President Miguel Diaz-Canel visited the area on Thursday and blamed the US and capitalist media for stoking protests, saying he is willing to speak with upset citizens. Reuters requested an interview with Communist Party officials to discuss the earlier demonstrations, but received no response.
Thousands of people protested in Budapest near Parliament. They want Prime Minister Viktor Orban to step down.
Right, and the protests were triggered after former government insider accused a senior aide to Orban of trying to interfere in a graft case. Protesters marched from the Chief Prosecutor's office towards the Parliament, chanting slogans against the Prime Minister and the Chief Prosecutor.
The problem with the current politicians is that they do not have integrity. There is no more honesty. It's all about their businesses, which we, taxpayers, are paying. And I think this has to come to an end here. There were attempts for this many times before. Perhaps now there will be something happening.
Lawyer and former close aide to the government, Peter Magyar, told the crowd that Hungary was in its greatest political, moral and legal crisis since the fall of communism. He plans to launch a new party to challenge Orban. Magyar earlier published a recording of a conversation with Judith Varga, then his wife and Hungary's justice minister.
In the audio clip, the former justice minister detailed an attempt by aides to Orban's cabinet chief to remove certain parts from documents in a graft case. The case is centered on former Justice Ministry State Secretary Volner, who was charged in 2022 with accepting bribes.
Prosecutors said in a statement they would analyze the tape, which Magyar said he recorded in January last year. Varga has so far not disputed the authenticity of the tape. The allegations come at a politically sensitive time for Orban, that is, ahead of European parliamentary elections in June.
The allegations follow a sex abuse scandal that brought down two of Orban's political allies as well. All right, and Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte has publicly voiced his concern over cyber espionage by China-backed hackers.
And of course, this comes as President Xi Jinping met the Dutch Prime Minister in Beijing. Prime Minister Rutte is paying a working visit to China. This is the first time that Netherlands is publicly accusing China over cyber attack claims. According to the Dutch Defense Ministry, China-backed cyber spies hacked into their internal computer system last month. The hackers reportedly installed a malicious software that cloned the system, and this was seen as a political espionage against the Netherlands and its allies.
And this comes in the backdrop of recent charges leveled by UK for hacking their voter data of over 40 million people. Britain has also imposed sanctions on two Chinese individuals and one China-based company. These entities are said to have some sort of involvement in data hacking. However, Beijing, it routinely denies allegations of cyber espionage and says it opposes all forms of cyber attack.
On the other hand, China and Netherlands are also in a confrontation over the export of high-tech semiconductors manufactured in Netherlands. During the meet, President Xi Jinping warned Prime Minister Rutte against creating tech barriers. Xi Jinping also offered to import more from Netherlands and to ramp up cooperation.
First of all, I cannot go into all the details of the talks I had today. What I can tell you is that when it is about our semicon sector and companies like ASML, that when we have to take measures, that they are never aimed at one country specific. That we always try to make sure that the impact is limited, is not impacting the supply chain, and therefore is not impacting, let's say, the overall economic relationship.
Well, with that, it's time now for a short break.
Don't go anywhere, lots more on the other side. When we get back, we'll be focusing on what's happening in the Indian political circle. The Delhi High Court has refused to grant any interim relief to Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal. The court has declined to interfere in his arrest by the Enforcement Directorate in the liquor policy scam case. What is the way ahead for Delhi and its Chief Minister? We'll get you the full report.
Also on the other side, FTX co-founder and disgraced crypto billionaire Sam Bankman-Fried is scheduled to be sentenced today. The disgraced crypto techie was convicted last year of defrauding his customers, investors and lenders. We will get you all the details. Do stay tuned.
on the next episode of World of Africa. A sigh of relief after nearly 300 abducted school children are freed in Nigeria. Hundreds of Kenyan doctors protest in the streets, demanding better pay and working conditions in an ongoing nationwide strike that has entered the second week. The doctors carried placards and chanted against the Kenyan government, saying it had failed to implement a raft of promises. And a new generation of social media influencers are making sure hotspots in Morocco's historic Marrakesh are promoted to their peers across the globe. Watch World of Africa at these times only on WION. World is One.
Economic turmoil and global unrest have cast a shadow over President Joe Biden's approval ratings.
The rockets are continuing to be fired by Hamas in Gaza, although at a slower rate than previously.
So, right now, we are with the volunteers from the Aleppo municipality. They are still trying to go to the rescue for the people they can find out.
India has emerged as a major diplomatic force at the world stage.
The rising cost of living in Nigeria continues to impact citizens from all walks of life.
The citizens of Gujarat witnessed a mega roadshow here in the city of Ahmedabad.
China is South Africa's largest trading partner for 134 years straight.
A domestic aircraft carrying 72 people on board crashed in Pokhara city in central Nepal.
165 injuries have been moved, 61 people are confirmed dead, and rescue operations continue around me.
After receiving an entire season's rainfall in a span of 48 hours, Chennai city has literally been brought to its knees.
For WION, World is One.
The biggest democratic exercise on the planet ever. Decoding the multiple colors of this multi-dimensional, multi-layered spectacle. WION deciphers the images and the hues. Sifts real performance from rhetoric and noise, claims and counterclaims, populist pitches and hidden truths. Untangling, unraveling this celebration of democracy.
WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION, World is One.
Alright, welcome back to World DNA. Thank you so much for staying with us. Of course, so far on the show, we've covered what's happening in Israel and Gaza and also the other forefront, that is Russia and Ukraine. We'll, of course, continue to bring you all the developments on those fronts as well. Let's take a look at some of the other developments. Here's a look at the headlines.
Israel asks the White House to reschedule a high-level meeting on military plans for Rafah that Prime Minister Netanyahu had abruptly cancelled earlier.
Pakistan Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif reviews security arrangements for Chinese projects, orders a joint probe by military and civilian officials into a suicide bombing that killed 5 engineers from China.
No relief from Delhi High Court to Arvind Kejriwal in the Delhi liquor scam case. The Delhi Chief Minister will be produced in local court as his ED custody ends today.
At least 4 people killed in a stabbing spree in Illinois, with 1 victim in critical condition and other 4 in stable condition, according to the local officials.
The bodies of 2 people have been recovered from a vehicle which was submerged under the waters where the Baltimore Bridge collapsed. Operation to recover the bodies of 4 more people presumed dead continues.
Former U.S. Senator Joe Lieberman, who ran as the Democratic nominee for vice president in the 2000 election and became the first Jewish candidate on a major party ticket for the White House, dies at the age of 82.
Japan's unmanned moon lander wakes up after surviving a second frigid 2-week lunar night and transmits new images back to Earth, says the country's space agency.
Danielle Collins is playing her best tennis in the last season of her career. The home favourite beats Caroline Garcia in Miami and will face 14th seed Ekaterina Alexandrova in the semi-final.
The Delhi High Court has refused to grant any interim relief to Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal, and the court has declined to interfere in his arrest by the Enforcement Directorate.
And this is, of course, in the liquor policy scam case, refusing any interim relief to the Chief Minister. The High Court issued a notice to the Enforcement Directorate seeking its reply to the Chief Minister's plea. The court asked the probe agency to respond by the 2nd of April, after which the next hearing is set for the 3rd of April. In its 10-page order, the High Court observed that the plea raises several issues of legality and validity regarding the arrest and remand and whether it is politically motivated and malified.
On the other hand, the Enforcement Directorate has summoned the Aam Aadmi Party's Goa leaders. The summon is related to the money laundering case linked to Delhi liquor policy. Reports claim Aam Aadmi Party's Goa chief Amit Palekar, along with other leaders, have been asked to reach the agency's Goa office later today. The probe agency alleges that a huge chunk of illicit money was sent to the state during the 2022 Goa Assembly polls. In its charge sheet, ED claimed that Aam Aadmi Party, from the 100 crore alleged bribe, used 45 crores in its Goa poll campaign. However, Palekar says there is no evidence supporting this claim.
The ED has accused Kejriwal of being the kingpin and key conspirator of the alleged Delhi excise scam. The Aam Aadmi Party leader was arrested by the Enforcement Directorate on the 21st of March. A Delhi court sent Kejriwal to 6-day ED custody. Later today, the special court is all set to hear the matter again as the remand tenure comes to an end. And for more on this, our correspondent Dharamjot joins us live from outside the Enforcement Directorate office in New Delhi. Dharamjot, thank you so much for joining us. Of course, to begin with, big day today, what can we expect? Is there any word on what's happening right now?
Arvind Kejriwal is expected to be produced at the Rouse Avenue Court at around 2 p.m. in the afternoon today, post-lunch hours. So a lot of courtroom drama and action is expected in the second half of the day. Having said that, we also heard from the Delhi Chief Minister's wife yesterday making a big statement on what Arvind Kejriwal is expected to present or speak about in court today, most of which pertains to what she referred to as quote-unquote evidence and big revelations being made in terms of where the alleged money trail for the liquor policy scam is, and a whole lot of other information is also expected to come out as per her remarks yesterday. So all eyes currently are obviously now at Rao's Avenue Court to see how this entire trial for Arvind Kejriwal unfolds, especially because his custody with the ED ends today.
Yes.
But on the other hand, we're also hearing about the Central Bureau of Investigation, which is looking to seek remand, to carry forward their investigation into the alleged scam. So, of course, there is a lot of courtroom drama for Rao's Avenue. On the other hand, we also have a PIL in the Delhi High Court, which is seeking to remove Arvind Kejriwal from the post of Delhi Chief Minister. So, a lot on the line for Arvind Kejriwal today.
Dharam, also wanted to get your thoughts on this. The Goa leaders of the Aam Aadmi Party have also been summoned now by the Enforcement Directorate. How far will the Aam Aadmi Party be? How do they see this election coming up, and how do you feel they're going to be proceeding going forward from here?
Well, Shivan, we also touched upon this last week, when Arvind Kejriwal was first arrested and presented in court. There is a big void in terms of top leadership for the Aam Aadmi Party, especially the party's founder, and sitting chief minister being taken into custody over an alleged scam. So, all heads are currently on the table in terms of figuring out the next step. We're also seeing that a lot of marches and gatherings are planned. We heard about opposition leaders led by the Aam Aadmi Party carrying out a rally on March 31st. So clearly they're also expecting this entire trial to go on for a while. On the other hand, we hear about the legal team trying to try every trick in the book and every possible avenue they have to get relief for Arvind Kejriwal. But the party is this close to the election.
Yes.
Of course, at odds and ends in terms of who their star leader will be, who their star campaigner will be, when their chief is behind bars, as and when that situation arises. So a lot on at stake for the party, just weeks ahead of the election. And as we saw, top leadership, following up on meetings and coming together, to figure out a plan of action. That will also accelerate once we hear about what happens with Arvind Kejriwal today. Shivan.
All right, that was our correspondent Dharam Jyot joining us from outside the Enforcement Directorate office in New Delhi. Dharam, of course, there's going to be a lot of action going forward, a lot of courtroom drama. We will be tracking all of those developments with you on ground. And we are going to be bringing you more updates from the world of technology next. Come right back.
Okay, now, in today's digital age, cybersecurity has become a cause of concern for companies, governments, individuals around the world.
And with Paris gearing up to host the 2024 Olympics, the French armed forces are reviewing their cyber capabilities ahead of the major sporting event.
Now, the aim here is to avoid cyber-related incidents during the 2024 Olympics.
Pour les JO comme ailleurs, les gens qui voudraient renvoyer une...
During the Olympics and beyond, you'll have people who want the publicity, like criminals, hackers, or people who want to tarnish France's image. That is why the combination of a cyber attack and an attack of influence which aims to bring discredit could be significant.
Davantage pour avoir de l'importance. Si on reprend l'attaque qu'il y a eu...
Different branches of the French military, including the Air Force, the Navy, are conducting live exercises to test the country's cyber defenses.
We talk to our partners, especially when it comes to cyber defense and sharing information about the threats. As soon as we detect malware, we share this between ourselves so that we can all guard ourselves against it. By protecting each other, we quash its proliferation.
The 2-week-long test will help evaluate the military's readiness in the event of a cyber attack. The live drill comes 2 weeks after a cyber attack paralyzed much of the government's internal communication services.
All right, and combat drones have played a vital role in the Russia-Ukraine war.
Well, this, of course, as the conflict rages on, Ukraine's army is now ramming up the use of drones for surveillance missions across the front line.
Now take a look at these visuals. The video is from Bakhmut, a city situated in eastern part of Ukraine. The Ukraine military force can be seen launching a combat drone called Poseidon H-10. Now this is proving to be important for Ukrainian forces as it allows soldiers to locate targets within Russian near lines.
This carries a good camera with a great focus, capable of spotting the target and following it so we can see it in detail. We can operate it day and night.
Designed to collect enemy military intelligence, the long-range drone is capable of penetrating 50 kilometers deep into enemy lines.
The 4 battalions that still reside in the Rafah region must be destroyed. That is non-negotiable. One thing I've learned from talking to the Israeli Defense Forces is if these battalions are left intact, everything they've achieved will be lost over time. So I urge the Biden administration, the Congress, to make sure that Israel has the time and space to achieve victory over Hamas militarily.
With Russia advancing in Ukraine on the defense, this latest development is likely to heighten Russia's concerns about Ukraine's combat drone capabilities.
FTX co-founder and disgraced crypto billionaire Sam Bankman-Fried will be sentenced today.
Of course, last year he was convicted of defrauding his customers, investors and lenders. The entrepreneur who presided over the largest crypto collapse in history faces up to 110 years. Prosecutors have requested a sentence of about 40 to 50 years.
While Bankman-Fried's lawyers asked for 6.5 years, sentences for white-collar crimes have ranged from 150 to more years in recent times. All eyes will be on Judge Lewis Kaplan, who presided over Bankman-Fried's trial last year. Kaplan even revoked Bankman-Fried's bail and put him behind bars before the trial began. During the trial, the judge repeatedly admonished Bankman-Fried for not directly answering questions. Dozens of victims who lost their life savings due to FTX's demise have urged Kaplan to impose a harsh sentence on him.
Now, let's just give you a quick recap of the entire FTX saga as well. The son of 2 Stanford professors, we're talking about Bankman-Fried, worked on Wall Street before riding the crypto wave. And at one point, his net worth was estimated at $26 billion. But his fortune collapsed in November 2022 when FTX declared bankruptcy after a wave of customer withdrawals. Later, he was accused of siphoning off $8 billion of customer funds to buy luxury properties and to donate to politicians. The 32-year-old MIT graduate was arrested in December 2022 in the Bahamas and extradited to the United States.
Bankman-Fried has argued for a more lenient sentence, adding that his depraved supervillain image is far from the truth. His lawyers argue that Bankman-Fried eschews materialistic trappings and suffers from a health condition that causes his near-complete absence of enjoyment, motivation and interest. Bankman-Fried will have one more chance in court Thursday to make a last statement. Bankman-Fried's sentencing will complete a dramatic fall for the former billionaire who once ran the world's second-largest crypto exchange.
And the tech world is experiencing a seismic shift as well as giants like Tesla, Apple and Google grapple with challenges both internal and external.
And amid growing scrutiny from governments and investors alike, these once unstoppable forces are now facing headwinds in the stock markets. Take a look at this next report for more details.
The Magnificent Seven, a group of tech giants like Apple, Alphabet, Amazon, Meta, Microsoft, Nvidia and Tesla led a market rally in 2023. The stock prices soared, pushing the S&P 500 up over 100%. But whispers of trouble are starting to grow in 2024. The first concern is concentration risk. These 7 companies now make up over 29% of the S&P 500 index. This means the entire market's health hinges on the performance of a handful of players. It's a house of cards, and some worry a strong gust of wind could send it tumbling. Secondly, while valuations aren't quite as extreme, some analysts believe that the Magnificent Seven might be overvalued compared to their actual earnings potential. This has investors jittery, wondering if the party might be about to end. The cracks are already showing. Tesla, once a market darling, has seen its stock price plummet over 28% in 2024, making it the worst performer in the S&P 500. Apple is facing a slowdown in China, with iPhone sales dropping a worrying 24% year to date. It's important to remember this comes amid growing government scrutiny of big tech's dominance and practices. Regulatory actions could be another hurdle for these companies to navigate. However, there's a potential bright spot. Artificial intelligence remains a powerful driver of innovation for many of these companies. Nvidia, for example, is experiencing a surge thanks to its strong performance in the AI sector. The future of the tech rally hinges on the remaining Magnificent Three: Apple, Alphabet, and Tesla. Can they overcome their current difficulties and regain their momentum? The answer will determine whether the party continues or if a tech correction is on the horizon. Bureau Report, WION. World is One.
All right, next up, let's take a look at the stories that are making headlines in the world of sport, starting with Australian Open champion Jannik Sinner, who's breezed into the semi-finals of the Miami Masters. The second seed dispatched Czech Republic's Thomas Mahak to become the first player to register 20 wins this season. Mahak entered the quarter-final clash on the back of wins against former world number 1 Andy Murray and 5th seed Andrei Rublev. The Czech was